With the NFL draft concluding and rookie drafts in clear sight, people want to know, what are some of the best and worst fantasy landing spots? We talk about that next on Draft Brothers. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us. Welcome back to another episode of Draft Brothers. I am your host, Jeff Hasley, and I'm joined by my draft brother, Dan Turner. What's up, Dan?
Just getting over the post-draft hangover.
Exactly. Yes. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about landing spots for fantasy purposes. So who had the best landing spot? Who had the worst landing spot? We're going to talk about that and discuss these by position so you can be more informed when it comes to your rookie drafts that are coming up here. So let's go ahead and get this kicked off. Let's talk about the worst landing spots, and we'll go with quarterback. I really don't have a player in this draft class that I don't really hate the landing spot for. I mean, I suppose we could kind of say Will Levis with Tennessee, but at least he has the opportunity to kind of wait behind Ryan Tannehill. So that's not that bad. I mean, it could be worse, in my opinion. But what do you think about Levis? Why would he be a bad landing spot in Tennessee?
I just don't like him as a prospect, honestly. I think that Tennessee, in terms of what we discussed with the other quarterbacks with good supporting casts around them, like Anthony Richardson, and even Bryce Young has some decent pieces. And I think that Levis doesn't really have that. He has, Burks at wide receiver and not much else, and a very, very old and getting older Derrick Henry that might not be there within a year, and then pretty much nothing. I mean, they have a tight end that I won't try to pronounce, but other than that, in terms of the quality of his weaponry, it's very, very lacking. And he's the kind of guy that had question marks. A lot of people expected him to go in the first, and he dropped out of the first for a reason. So I think that while it's good that he's behind Ryan Tannehill and could learn, I just don't think that he got done any favors going to a situation where the lack of pieces around him are going to probably stunt his development, especially considering what the other quarterbacks that got drafted, the situations they got drafted to. I think he was the worst of the bunch.
All right. Let's talk about running back. And I think the one running back that you have to mention that got a kind of a landing spot that was unfavorable was Zach Cahrbonnet going to Seattle, who already has Kenneth Walker, who turned into a stud last year. And now they have Charbonnet, who was projected to be like the top 3, top 4 rookie running back in this draft class. And now he's going to have to share the backfield with Kenneth Walker. That's not ideal, but it sure sounds like Pete Carroll and the Seahawks are looking for a committee type of approach. It's really not good for either of them, if you ask me. And, Charbonnet could have had a much better landing spot. So that's why I think Charbonnet belongs on this list.
Yeah, this is basically what I call the apocalypse, where, Seattle drafted a running back that we all expected to go to a good situation, and it was a high, mid-first round pick in fantasy drafts, and completely destroyed his value by putting him behind one of the, breakout running backs of last year's draft class. So there might be, both running backs got hurt in this situation, because obviously you don't draft Charbonnet that high if you don't plan on playing him. So that takes away from Walker's workload, and Walker is good enough where Charbonnet is never going to start there. So, I mean, I really couldn't imagine a worse landing spot for him. Maybe Indy with Jonathan Taylor, or the Jets behind Breece Hall. But other than that, this is probably a top 3 worst landing spot for any running back to be in, especially one that was, supposed to go as high as he was supposed to go pre-draft.
Yeah. And another running back who I think, it depends on who you ask. I think this is not the greatest spot for him, and that's Tank Bigsby, the Auburn running back who landed with Jacksonville, who, of course, already has Travis Etienne, and they have Doug Peterson at head coach, who loves to use that running back by committee approach that we've seen with him throughout the years. So now Tank Bigsby is part of that backfield. Etienne's most likely going to get half the carries, and Bigsby get the other half. So neither one is really going to be like the top guy. So Bigsby, it's a decent opportunity as far as a team is concerned for him, but from a fantasy sense, it's not great.
Yeah. And that's really like the theme for running backs, like in the worst landing spotlights. In terms of fantasy, there isn't a situation where Tank Bigsby is going to be able to get the bulk of the work in Jacksonville. It's Travis Etienne's team. He did really well last year. You have other running backs, JaMychal Hasty, Dearness Johnson was signed from Cleveland. So it's a big jumble there. And again, it's one of those places where if he had gone to somewhere else without a more established running back in front of him, it would have been better. But just like Zach Cahrbonnet, he went to a place where he has a young, running back that has already produced in a good offense. So the opportunities that he could have gotten elsewhere, he's not going to get here. So that's why it's a bad landing spot for him.
Yeah. All right, another one, and of course this is Tennessee. When you're talking about Tennessee, you're talking about Derrick Henry. So any running back that comes in behind Henry, not the greatest spot. And that's Tyjae Spears, who was our Senior Bowl darling, who looked really good there and kind of showcased his skills and abilities. And Tennessee said, you know what, let's draft him. This is someone who kind of has like he's had knee injuries in the past, multiple ACLs, and now we're finding out that he doesn't even have an ACL. And I don't know if it's his left or right knee, but still, that's a little concerning. Tyjae Spears in Tennessee, obviously not great because Henry's there, but can he outlast Henry and be someone for Tennessee? What are your thoughts there?
No. I think that, he's going to be the backup to Derrick Henry until Derrick Henry retires or leaves or whatever. So there's no clear chance for him to get opportunities immediately. And like you point out, the fact that he doesn't have an ACL, he has arthritis, and he has a full cartilage loss. And like those are things that you expect of a running back when they're 32, not someone that was just drafted. I understand that he had a fantastic, Senior Bowl, and he was like the Dameon Pierce of this year's Senior Bowl. But those medical flags are just way too much to overcome. Especially on a team that isn't really going anywhere right now, behind a running back that most consider probably the best pure running back in the game. So until Derrick Henry leaves, this is a null and void conversation anyway. So I don't trust him as a player. I don't like his landing spot. I don't think Will Levis is going to do him any favors when he takes that job. It's just bad all around.
All right, let's talk about the diminutive Deuce Vaughn, who landed with Dallas in the draft. His father is part of the coaching staff. He's a short guy. He's not extremely fast, but yet he gets results. I'm kind of curious why you think that Vaughn is a bad fit in Dallas. I'm kind of on the fence on this one.
All right, so he's smaller running back, right? With some speed, some shiftiness, some decent receiving ability. I think we can agree on that, right? So the two things I have a problem with. One is his draft capital, which is terrible. His measurables aren't great, and he doesn't do pass protection very well at all. And he comps to the better version of himself that's already on the team. So
Tony Pollard.
Yeah. And Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard is the best case scenario for what Deuce Vaughn could be. So why would you play a lesser version of the guy you already have that you committed to by releasing Ezekiel Elliott? I mean, I think of this as more of a kind of like a nepotism pick anyway. I mean, his dad works in the front office. We'll do him a solid, throw a 6th-round pick at him. He might do well. It's a change of pace, whatever. But he's just not going to get opportunities. There's no if McCarthy plays this guy over Pollard, he should be fired because it's just coaching malpractice. Because there's no reason to play a lesser version of the running back you already have. There just isn't.
All right. I mean, I can sort of understand that. Plus, they may re-sign Zeke Elliott to a lesser contract, right? And, then he's part of the depth chart ahead of him. So, all right. that Deuce Vaughn. We I guess we can agree that we don't necessarily like that spot. Let's move on to wide receiver, and the first one that comes to my mind is Jaxson Smith-Njigba, who is drafted by Seattle, who already has DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, right? He comes in as the number 3 type of receiver. Now, he could still have a good, productive first year, if not second and third, right? When Lockett moves on, because his cap is too high. However, if let's just say Smith-Njigba was drafted by the Giants, would you agree that he would have a stronger fantasy appeal as a Giant than with Seattle? Kind of curious on your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, 1,000%. If he were drafted pretty much anywhere else, I would agree with that. But the fact that he was drafted in front of 2 guys that are consistent fantasy producers, I understand that Tyler Lockett is getting up there in age. Just really sucks. I mean, he's not going to get the target share he would have gotten elsewhere, like on the Giants or pretty much anywhere that wasn't Cincinnati or Philly or any of these other teams. Like if he went to, Minnesota next to JJ or like Kansas City or any other, I mean, obviously he wouldn't have lasted that long, but, or even Tennessee, if he would have gone to Tennessee, he would have been the surefire number 1 there. The fact that he's not the number 1, and it's going to be a couple of years before he's number 1, if he ever gets number 1 ahead of DK, definitely hurts his value. Not to say that his value is going to take a nosedive, not to say he's not still uber talented. It's just that the slam dunk, JSN was the number 1 wide receiver off the board in rookie drafts is very muddled now, but due to his landing situation.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. I mean, it's possible that Tyler Lockett could be like the late season version of Golden Tate, right? Tate eventually kind of slid off of the fantasy map a little bit, and it just kind of happened quickly. Wonder if that could happen with Lockett, and therefore Smith-Njigba kind of comes in and really makes a splash. That's possible. I don't think we can rule that out. There's a non-zero chance that could happen. But yeah, I still agree with you. He needed to be the number 1 receiver, I think, to be like to have that fantasy appeal that we were looking for, and he just didn't get that.
No.
All right, so let's talk about a guy who was drafted by the Chiefs. Now you're thinking Chiefs wide receiver? Yeah, let me in. Rashee Rice. Why do you not like Rashee Rice in Kansas City? I'm kind of curious about this one because I think there's an opportunity for him to at least kind of replace Juju Smith-Schuster in that offense. Tell me about Rice. What do you think?
I hated him as a prospect. I mean, okay. I hated him. He didn't run good routes. He was, pretty much bullied by any kind of press coverage. And this was in the, AAC. How is he going to do in the NFL? He has great ball tracking and he has great jump ball skills, but so did J.J. Arcega-Whiteside when he was drafted, and we saw how that turned out in Philly. And I think this is a little bit of what happened with CEH. We're like, oh, he's in the Chiefs. He's automatically going to be, this fantasy superstar. And I just don't see it. I think that he's not going to be good enough to crack the starting lineup in Kansas City. I don't think that and if he does, he's not good enough to stay there. I think he'll be exposed against better competition that he's going to see in the league. And I think he was overdrafted. So, I mean, yeah, the Chiefs have, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and Valdez-Scantling already. So I don't see him beating any of those guys to start off with. Maybe he takes Valdez-Scantling job eventually, but he's not taking Tony's. I don't think he's going to take Sky Moore's. And Travis Kelce is the number 1 guy anyway, as long as he's still there. So at best, you're looking at number 4 or number 5 if you keep it Isaiah Pacheco or Jerick McKinnon. I just don't see. I mean, this is just CEH syndrome all over again. But just because he went to Patrick Mahomes, he's not going to turn into some superstar receiver. He's still the receiver he was at SMU. He's just not good enough.
Okay. All right. Well, let's switch our gears over to Green Bay and talk about their second-round draft pick that they took, Jayden Reed out of Michigan State. I see Reed with the opportunity to kind of jump in and be that wide receiver opposite Christian Watson. I mean, if you're looking at the depth chart, you also have Romeo Dobbs in the mix as well. Could Reed beat out Dobbs? Yeah, I think he could, and I think he could start next to Watson. I'm curious why you think this may not be the greatest fit for him. Is it quarterback? Is it unsure of the offense? What's your thoughts?
I think it's both. I think, we haven't really seen what Jordan Love can do. So that in itself is a big question mark for the entire offense. Okay. I think that, what the competition he has to deal with, you have A.J. Dillon, you have Aaron Jones, you have Christian Watson, you have Dobbs, you have the two tight ends they just drafted in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. Yeah. So it's a really big jumble of guys that we have to see the pecking order. Now, if somehow he comes out of that and he's like, for example, the third receiver, then maybe. But again, that depends on how Jordan Love does. Can Jordan Love, support that many fantasy relevant players? Or is it just going to be pretty much a Christian Watson show and that's it? So I think it's just a load of question marks, both on whose quarterback it is and where he, is going to end up on the depth chart. And how many targets he's going to have. So I think that's someone where, I think you could take him because there's definitely some upside there where he can learn and grow from Love. But I think that there were much, clear situations where if he had gone to certain other teams, he would have had a better chance of, immediately contributing.
Yeah, and I think you kind of buy the dip there. You mentioned some good points, about uncertainty in the offense of Green Bay. Lots of players involved there. But second round draft capital is pretty darn good. He's someone I would take a flyer on at the end of the second round, early third round, something like that, in rookie drafts. So I see the concern, but I also like the ability to buy that discount. All right. What about Cedric Tillman with Cleveland? Of course, you've got Amari Cooper there. They just recently got Elijah Moore in the offseason by trade. And you have Donovan Peoples-Jones. Where is Tillman going to fit in? And he was in my opinion, I thought he was kind of slid a little bit in the draft. So there's that as well as far as the concern is concerned. Talk to us about Tillman.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Basically, we don't know where he's going to land on the depth chart there. And does, Deshaun Watson bounce back to being Houston Deshaun Watson? Right. You have Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is locked in one there. Donovan Peoples-Jones, they just traded for Elijah Moore. And then you have Cedric Tillman. I mean, you have third round capital, so it's not like they heavily invested in him. And while he has good college tape, a lot of the skills that he's shown in college are already replicated by the guys in front of him. So I think it's another case of someone that got taken and is definitely going to have to work his way back up to even the starting lineup, because I don't think he's a starter right now. I think he's wide receiver 4 to begin the season, and then hope that Watson is good enough again to support the kind of target share that Tillman is going to need to be fantasy relevant.
Yeah. All right. Let's switch over to tight ends. What were the worst landing spots for tight end? I'm going to start with someone that I kind of shifted my gears a little bit on. I've changed my opinion, and that's Sam LaPorta with Detroit. Initially, I thought, that's not really a great spot. We've talked to Jeff Risdon before, media personality with the Lions, who said, Detroit got rid of Hawkinson. They didn't want to pay him, but they also don't really use the tight end much in their offense. And so that kind of stuck with me. But then I'm thinking, well, all right, well then why did they just go and draft Sam LaPorta after trading away TJ Hawkinson, of course, for that second round pick? They got LaPorta, also from the University of Iowa. We know Iowa is a tight end producing factory. So I don't know. I kind of think that maybe they will kind of switch their philosophy around a little bit, their game strategy, and include that tight end. So I'm a little bit on board of this now, the move for Sam LaPorta being in Detroit. I know you're not. So let's hear about your thoughts.
If they wanted to keep an Iowa tight end, they should have just kept TJ Hawkinson, who's a better player than Sam LaPorta is. So I don't see
they got a second round pick for him. They don't have to pay him the high money, right? The big contract. So now they have, if you could say, maybe his replacement to a lesser degree without the big contract.
Yeah, I can see that. I just think that, it's also like a lot of players on this. It's also like how good or how well of a target share is he really going to get? I mean, you have, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know Jameson Williams is suspended for his gambling stuff, but he'll be back eventually. And then you draft Jahmyr Gibbs, whose literal value is as a receiving running back. So in terms of what's been done in the past with tight ends in this offense, in addition to the moves they made to bring in other people with, better target shares, I just can't trust that they're going to treat LaPorta any better than they have the tight ends of the past, who were more talented than LaPorta was. I mean, it's not a bad situation. I think that, conceptually, Goff is decent. He can definitely support a tight end. I just don't think from a coaching philosophical standpoint, they're going to use him that way because they haven't used the tight ends that they've had in the past. And I think the addition of Gibbs is going to take a large chunk of that, short to intermediate, target share away from what LaPorta could be doing in the field. So I think just overall, I'm going to stick to my guns and say it's still not a good move.
All right. Well, you have two differing opinions there on LaPorta in Detroit. You got mine, which I like, and you got Dan's, which he doesn't. So utilize that at your best. All right. Green Bay, they drafted two tight ends, Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. Why is this a bad landing spot for both? Is it just because, hey, there's one's going to be there and then the other is also there on the depth chart and you're not really sure how that's going to, we've seen that before. Two good tight ends on a team and, they kind of cancel each other out. Is that kind of how you see this?
Yes, that's literally the exact reason. I think that, I mean, it's not
like the Indianapolis Colts have been, really famous for this, right?
Right, exactly. And this isn't, going to be a New England situation where you have Gronkowski and then Aaron Hernandez comes in and plays, a lesser but equally valuable role. I just, again, going back to the Reed portion of the show, I don't trust Jordan Love to be able to support two fantasy tight ends. Right. I think they're going to cannibalize each other. And it's really a big waste because we were all looking forward to them going to a much better spots, or even if just one of them had been drafted, or if either one had just been the only person that was drafted, we'd be much higher on that person. But because both of them are both going to both spots, there's only so many targets to go around. So I just don't think that either are going to get the targets necessary to become fantasy relevant, which is a shame.
If I had to pick one, I guess I would say Musgrave over
I agree
Kraft.
There. Yeah.
You agree with me
on that one? Yeah.
Yeah. And, we'll see how that plan plays out. But all right, another one here, Dallas tight end. They wanted Dalton Kincaid and Buffalo said, nope, I'm going to move up ahead of you in the draft. And Dallas was not able to get their tight end until a little bit later with Luke Schoonmaker. Now, there's some good things to talk about with him, but there also the fact is, hey, is he any better than what they currently have on staff right now, right? With Ferguson and Hendershot, I forget his name. Hendershot, thank you. Right, as well as Jake Ferguson. Sorry. Can Schoonmaker come in and make a difference over those two right off the bat? That's debatable, man. I don't think so, and therefore it's not the greatest spot for a fantasy spot here for Schoonmaker. And I'm pretty sure everyone kind of understands this. What Schoonmaker has to do is come in and just be outstanding and kind of separate himself from those two. And that's kind of a tall order to ask for a rookie tight end. Plus, Kellen Moore is no longer there. And he was the one who kind of incorporated Dalton Schultz into the offense as being more of a, of a target for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys offense. So there's just question marks there.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I couldn't really add much more to what you said. I think that I don't have, Schoonmaker being better than Jake Ferguson. I think he might even be a little worse. So the fact that Dallas felt the need to, draft him in the second round when they had a guy that was, just as good already there is perplexing for me. I mean, he doesn't really, jump out, athletically or anything, but I think just think it's a waste of a pick. I think he won't beat out Jake Ferguson, and
Okay.
it was just he doesn't really have a shot of being fantasy relevant.
Yeah, like I said, he's going to have to stand on his head over the other two, and I'm not sure if he can do that. All right, another tight end that I want to discuss that was kind of talked a lot about in the early going here as far as the draft process is concerned. Real strong tight end, doesn't necessarily fit the bill of being an athletic type of behemoth type of. Well, he is a behemoth, but an athletic type of tight end who can make a difference as a receiver. And that's Darnell Washington with Pittsburgh, drafted by the Steelers a little bit later than he fell in that draft. There's talk about him being on the offensive line as opposed to a tight end, even changing his position. Or if he is going to do anything, it'll most likely be, like an inline tight end, right? Someone who is just going to stay and be a blocker. And for fantasy purposes, you don't want that at all. So, curious on your thoughts on Washington.
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone was more in love with the prospect of what Washington was instead of what Washington actually was bringing to the table, what he could be. This perception that we gave of this 6'8", behemoth, running this incredibly class 40 time, like trucking everyone in his path, and that's not the reality of how he's going to be used now. I really think the Steelers are going to transition him over to offensive line. It kind of reminds me of Alejandro Villanueva, who was a defensive line prospect, and they switched him over to O-line, and he became one of the tackles. I think that that's with Pat Freiermuth there's again someone that's better at his position in front of him. So I really think that the reality of what Darnell Washington has to kind of override the potential and perception of what we all wanted him to be. So I think that this isn't really a good spot for him as kind of like an inline /6 offensive lineman kind of role instead of the receiving juggernaut we all wanted him to be.
All right, well, that pretty much does it for our worst landing spots here for fantasy purposes, dynasty and rookie drafts alike. So let us know what you think of these. Where are we wrong? Where are we right on? Let us know, and give us a subscribe, a like. And of course, we appreciate that. It really helps out our channel. If you enjoy this content, we appreciate that. Majority of people watching this right now are not subscribers to the show, so do yourself and help us and go ahead and click that subscribe button, and we appreciate that. And thanks, Dan. This is a pleasure, of course, always talking with you about this stuff. We hope that it was helpful to you, and can continue to watch all of our Draft Brothers content that's coming. We're going to talk about these players and where they've landed, and of course the teams and how they have now kind of transformed, so to speak, and of course as they develop as a result.
A ton of content coming
class.
your way. A ton of content.
Ton of content. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.